What would happen if, and we don't want to go there, and there are those who also
I'm happy to be here. And actually, I arranged this meeting on a short notice because I was flooded with questions of people about the last accident that happened in the East. And the questions came from all aspects of fear of flying, not only what happened, which I don't know exactly, but other fears raised from the ashes or intensified. And I figured out that it would be very, cheers. And I figured out it would be quite beneficial if we can meet and ventilate or talk about these things. So let me share my screen, which will allow me to keep track of what I'm saying and not to wander around. This is me. My name is Alon Pereg. I live in Israel. I'm an active Boeing 787 captain, right now furloughed, but I hope I will be back flying soon. Before that, I flew the Boeing 737, which is not in the best outfit right now. I was a captain there and a check airman and instructor. And way before that, I was an F-16 pilot in the Air Force. So all in all, I flew approximately 18,000 hours across 40 years, even actually more than 40 already. And I'm now very busy in developing an app that will be very helpful for people who are afraid of flying. Since I have your emails, I will tell you about it, and also I will give you uh, a period of time in which the full version of the app will be open to you, and it should be very soon. In a couple of weeks, we will release a full video course of that app, and it will include 2 hours and a half of full fear of flying course, free of charge for you guys. So without, maybe I will talk a little bit about it later, but let's go to our tonight's agenda. Tonight, it's here tonight. I would like to say a few words about the last accident, and it will be few words. If you do have any question, just post them here on the chat, and I will refer to the questions. I will answer as much as I can tell. Then there were questions in your forms that I will answer. And then if you have other questions that you would like to discuss, then it's going to be a question and answer until I go to sleep. You guys will quit. Let me mute you all.
Yeah.
Yes, I mute you all. Good. So, without too many details, yesterday was an accident of an Indonesian airline that took off and few minutes after takeoff just crashed into the water. The plane was a Boeing 737-500. It's approximate. It should be not younger than 20 years old aircraft, which is, and I will refer to it later, it's not a cause for an accident. The airline, this type Sriwijaya, is an airline, is domestic airline there, and it doesn't have very good reputation. And I will talk about it also when I will talk about the questions that you guys have. The weather, this is the exact weather. I am not sure if you know exactly how to read it, but I will tell you it's coming from the northwest, 6 nautical miles per hour. The visibility is 5,000 meters, which is very good visibility, light rain, and few clouds, storm clouds, which are called the cumulonimbus, that are not very low, and another layer that is overcast at 1,800 feet, which is not something that is difficult for an airline aircraft. Temperature is 25 and dew point whatever, and the other thing, and no significant change is expected. So bottom line, there were some storm cells around, which might cause the pilots to want to deviate to the left, to the right, in order not to fly into such a cloud. But this is not a storm or something like that that can do anything very severe to an aircraft, an airline aircraft. And the facts that I at least know until now is the aircraft took off, turned to the right. You see it here on the right screen. Turn to the right. Approximately here, the controller told the pilot here to turn to this direction. The pilot did not respond according to this. However, they started a right turn here, and there they crashed. So these are the facts. And the last fact that I read this a couple of hours ago, that they have located the black boxes, the 2 black boxes, which are called the black box, and are actually colored in some kind of shiny amber. One of them is the cockpit voice recorder, which should record everything that was said on the flight deck, and the flight deck and the flight data recorder, the FDR, which records all the parameters of the engine. So there is a good chance that we will know what happened there. Now, this is a tragic accident. It's nothing that we can say to underestimate it. But I need to tell you that if you are looking a little bit on the history, and you can see that the last fatal accidents were all in what is in that region, in airlines that are not, let's say, the highest in their class. And if you know, you guys know, and I would recommend to you to look at this site. It's called Airline Rating. I'm sorry that it was, I did this slide very quickly. It's called Airline Rating. And if you look at this airline, it gets very low rating after this accident because it's not fatality free. But you see that they did not meet the international audits. They do have only one V on the incident rating. That means that they have numerous serious pilot-related incidents. And this is not a very good airline, to say the least. If you look at other airlines there are also airlines that do not meet audits, and they are less safe, period. According to this site, I did not check the actual site, but I do look at this site in order to evaluate if an airline is considered safe or not. For your knowledge, the regular Western airlines are all 6 or 7 stars, and I did put this Canadian carrier here that does not meet the audits because in Canada they have alternate audits that some of the airlines are using, and this is not considered really an X here for the Canadian carriers. But all the other factors here are very interesting. As you can see, this airline is not the best in the class, as I said. So that's what I have to say about the accident. Nobody raised any question about it. So if you guys have anything that you would like to say, to ask, and if I can answer that, then okay. And if not, I will continue to the question that were asked in your forms. First of all, there were a couple of questions about the Boeing 737, the fact that this is an old aircraft, and does it have any connection with the 737 MAX? So, old aircraft means that it was assembled initially in the, let's say, in the 90s. By the way, this type of aircraft started to fly around the 90s. So this is a 20 to 30 years old aircraft. However, most of the systems of the aircraft are being replaced and changed according to schedule that is defined by the aircraft manufacturer. And this is not legal to delay it. It's not like in the car that you say, okay, I can pass a little bit and change the oil a few miles later. No, if you do that, the aircraft manufacturer raises a red flag. and you can get into a blacklist, which is not very nice to be there. So more or less, I can say that a 30 years old aircraft, most likely the engines and the main systems were replaced a couple of times, and some of them are pretty new. So bottom line, an old aircraft is mostly a challenge for the owner of the aircraft, because they have to change parts and things, but it's not less safe as a bottom line. And the second question about the Boeing 737 regarding the MAX, there is no connection, real connection between the MAX, and specifically, there is no connection between the problems of the MAX, the 737 MAX, and this 737. In a nutshell, just I'll tell you, the problem with the nuts was a problem that was originated in a new system that was installed there and did not exist in earlier versions of that aircraft. So there is no connection between the and still Boeing 737-500s fly in the Western world. This is the most commonly used airplane and a very, very safe one. So don't start to feel fear flying this type of aircraft. It's a very good one. And just so you know, I have approximately 6,000 hours on Boeing 737. Good. Now the airline and the country. And that goes to a general concept that I will address later on when I will talk about the general concept of airline flying. Airline flying around the world is being regulated according to the Chicago Convention that was signed in 1940 approximately, and that dictates how the airline industry will work. Now, many countries, or more or less all the countries in the world, signed this treaty. However, there are countries which are, let's say, less keen on keeping all the rules. For example, there was a crash in Pakistan a couple of months ago, after which it was noted that 40% of the pilots in Pakistan did not get the license correctly, or the opposite, only 40% did get the license according to the international regulations. So if you are flying in an airline that is regular, that is registered in a country that is, sort of speaking, normal, and if this airline is allowed to fly to the main cities of the world, then you could say that this airline is okay. If you're flying in an airline that is flying only regionally, and this airline does not fly to London, New York, or places like this, then you should ask yourself, what is the problem? In some countries, and I suspect that Indonesia is one of them, there is not a very strict rule that keeps the airlines from doing wrong things. For example, the Lion Air accident from the 737 MAX was not caused, listen to this, was not caused because of the Boeing 737 MAX. It had a contribution to the accident, but it was caused due to chain of things, one of which was the bad design, but this should not cause an accident. On top of this was a malfunction. On top of the malfunction was a bad treatment because they did not fix the malfunction that was known before the accident. And on top of this was a wrong handling of the pilots of the malfunction. So this is a chain of events that caused this accident. So to conclude the 737 issue here, the fact that it was old is not the issue, according to as much as I can tell. And if tomorrow you have to fly a 737-500, which was assembled on the 90s, you shouldn't have a problem with this. And there is no connection whatsoever between the problems of the 737 MAX and the 737, the other 737s in the world. And as I told you, why a lot of problems in Indonesia. So I believe that now you understand if a lot of problems happen there, it's not some kind of the Bermuda Triangle or bad karma or whatever. There is something wrong in how they maintain their the international rules that keep the aviation so safe. Are all the airlines in Indonesia unsafe or not as safe as in the USA? Europe, is it safe to travel to Indonesia? I don't know. However, I will say that as a rule, if you fly to Indonesia, I would prefer to fly in an American or European or Australian carrier and not Indonesian. That's what I would do. That's my gut feeling. It's not based on this. And I would definitely check that airline ratings website to see which airline I'm flying on. There was a question about the COVID-19 situation and actually the restart. During the pandemic, how are airplanes maintained and how pilots keep their air hours? So these are two different questions. Uh, aircraft are designed to fly. When they are on the ground, they are under loads that they were not designed for. And their engines are not lubricated and the pipes are not oiled, etc. So this is a problem. And therefore, the aircraft manufacturers uh, publish procedures that must be followed when the aircraft is on the ground for a certain amount of time. So up to a couple of weeks or so, there's nothing that needs to be done. And then after a couple of months, there is a certain procedures and on it goes. And when you want to bring them back, you have to do a certain, and again, predictated set of actions that are essential in order to bring the aircraft back to service. And if I'm not an expert in this, but it includes also one flight in order to make sure everything works. However, it can be expected that after a long stay on the ground, there will be a couple of systems that will work less good, and the aircraft is designed, and I will get to this also later, it's designed, one, to notify when there is a problem. It's not like in a car that you have to brake to see if the brakes are working. No, there are self-test systems that are testing every important system there. And when you start the system, it is performing a self-test. So this is mostly a headache for the operators, for the airlines, and less a safety issue. But this can cause some delays and things like that. If you are flying on an aircraft that it's the first hours that this aircraft is flying. However, in most parts of the world, airline aviation did not stop. And many airlines did some kind of rotation between the aircraft that are flying in order not to put aircraft on the ground for a prolonged time. And if they did, then they had to do a major check after returning the aircraft to fly. When talking about pilots, it's a different ballgame. And I have to tell you, in the app, once you get it, there is a clip about pilots. This is a very distinct profession. On one hand, the pilot is the only part of the aviation system that was not redesigned. It's the same old person with our good days and bad days, and this is the same machine. And because of that, the profession of being a pilot is so regulated. We lose our license every 6 to 8 months, by the way. I don't know if you know that. I don't know of any other profession that loses their license every 6 to 8 months, and we have to go through tests and procedures in order to get our license back every 6 to 8 months. And once we do not fly regularly, then we are grounded. For me, for example, in Israel, the aviation is quite low. My last airline flight was in June. So more than 6 months I haven't flown. When I go back to fly, I have to do some kind of a course, to go through some kinds of a course, which will include, by law, a set of briefings and then a couple of days in the simulator, after which there will be a test by a Czech airman that will verify then that I can go back to fly an aircraft. And then for the first or second, or maybe one or two flights, I will be accompanied by a Czech airman that will check that I'm flying correctly. So it's not that like riding a bicycle, let's go fly. No, there is a procedure how I return to fly. Let me drink some water. There is a question here. What are some of the options when an airplane has problems at the low of altitude? It's a very general question, and I will just say that, and it will bring me to the general concept here, that there is no single event whatsoever in the aviation that will cause an accident. I say it again. When you are driving in a car, you are in a situation in which a single event can cause an accident. You can imagine it by yourself. But when you go down the stairs, if you don't feel you are not concentrated, then you can fall and there will be an accident. When you are walking in the street, a boy on a scooter, an electrical scooter, can come from behind and there will be an accident. When you are in an airplane, in a passenger airplane, you are in the only place in your world in which a single event will never cause an accident. In order to have an accident, you must have a chain. Sorry. This is a good time to apologize for my English. This is not my native language. In order to create an accident, you have to have a chain of events that every event is a must in order to continue. So if something is breaking the chain, there will not be an accident. So I hope that answers your question about low altitude, and that's it. Um, that fact has just helped me so much. Okay. Are those procedures everywhere or just in Israel for pilots that haven't flown in a while? No, the procedure of pilot, according to the Chicago Convention, there is a set of rules. For example, I believe that the rule that you have to have 3 takeoffs and 3 landings every 90 days as the pilot that is actually flying the aircraft is a general uh, international law. Now, there might be a country that says, you know what? You guys are not going to tell me what to do, but in that case, that country has to publish that they do not follow this particular item. And and other countries can evaluate it and say, okay, guys, this is your country, your aircraft, but you cannot fly to us. And that results in a situation that what is called the differences between the convention and the local rules are quite minor. And there is and the answer is no. Every country has more or less the same limitations, same flight hours, rest hours limitations, and qualification and maintaining currency. All these are more or less around the world the same. So Israel is not different from other countries, and most of the world is leveling off, sort of speaking, either with the Federal Aviation Administration in the United States or the EASA, I don't remember the initials, in Europe, which are quite restrictive, believe me. And to finish that thing about the pilots are both the weakest link and the strong link of the chain, because most of the accidents in aviation, to my estimation, only estimate that 70 to 80% of the accidents in aviation were created by pilots. And the rest, which were not created by pilots, again, 70% of them could have developed for the better with better pilots. So if you are looking for a safe aviation, look for good pilots. That's uh, my take on it. So reasoning. Okay. Do pilots also have to go through a psychological evaluation along with the training? No, we do not have to do that. However, we are flying in an environment that you cannot hide anything. You are flying with somebody that can see immediately if you are not um, focused, not like you should be. And like everything in life, and I know the next question, like everything in life, sometimes you have mistakes. And across the last 50 years, I believe 3 times accidents were caused because psychological or psychiatrical problems with the pilots. Put it in a context. 50 years, 2 or 3 events, one in Germany, one in Egypt, and another one that I don't remember, were 30 or 40 years ago. How do we look for good pilots? Rachel, sorry, that's, I don't know. But I can tell you that pilots don't have to be excellent. They have to be disciplined. In my former pilot career, I was a fighter pilot. So you had to be very sharp and fast, etc. Here, no. It's not a profession for genius people. airline pilot. You have to be disciplined. You have to remember things. You have to be organized, and your country has to have a good system to monitor you. That's all. So if you're flying in a regular or charter airline in a civilized country, then you have good pilots. It's good enough. You don't have to have the sharpest guys in the class. No, you have to. It's not, and believe me, it's my work. You don't have to be a genius for that. When booking a flight with a commercial airline, yeah. So that was the question. Let's continue. Since you guys are mostly afraid of flying, then I'm going to answer a couple of questions about this. And I started to say that, but I need you to really understand why why flying has become so safe. Flying is maybe the safest activity that you can do. I'm not talking about transportation, which is, of course, the safest thing is flying an airline. Again, and when I'm talking about flying today, I'm only talking about airline because flying in small planes or something is not dangerous. So as well, but it does not follow the same rules. The general idea of airline aviation is based on the idea that no single event will create an accident. So I already explained. So if you try to put it on, let's say, road accidents, you will understand immediately why there is a difference. In airplane that carries 14 one four 14 passengers or more, there will always be at least two pilots, and you don't need two pilots for that. It's not very difficult, but there will always be two pilots there, because you are not going to let an accident happen if one of them is incapacitated for any reason. There are two pilots always, because every action that is being done on the flight deck is being cross-checked by the other. And we are being trained and examined if we know how to work to orchestrate our actions in a way that when one pilot is doing something, the other one is cross-checking him or her, by the way. So pilots are one thing, and I already told you about our license that's being canceled every 6 months, 6 to 8 months. It depends on the country, and we need to go through all these tests in order to regain it. The airplanes, and that is one thing that I'm not sure that you know. There is no single fault that will happen in an airplane that will create an accident. For example, an aircraft with two engines has one engine that it doesn't need. One of the engines is just something that, just in case, they are both operating. But when you take off, which is the let's say the hardest thing, because the aircraft is very slow and very low and did not burn any fuel. When you take off with two engines, one of them is just for fun. You have twice the power that you need, because the aircraft is built and tested, and we are training in a simulator every 6 to 8 months to prove that we know how to do it, to take off only with one engine. To lose an engine in the most critical phase, when you cannot stop because you are rotating now, but you are very low and slow, you can continue with the other engine. Now, these engines are separate. They're in separate wings. They get separate fuel from separate fuel tanks. They get separate computers are controlling them. Two different planes, let's say, and you only need one. If you're talking about the electricity, there is multiple redundancy levels or fuel. There is no single fuel leak that will keep us without fuel because there are separate tanks, one on the left wing, one on the right wing, another in the center. So every system of the airplane by law has backup so that there will not be a single event that can cause an accident. It can cause us to return to land or things like that, but or to divert if we're during the flight. If we lose an engine, then we do not fall from the sky, but we will not continue the flight because now we have only one engine. Questions here. So that, yes. One of the things that always trigger me when flying is if the fuse box completely breaks. Is this possible? Can the plane make it safe without engine? Gina, there is no fuse box. It's not like in our car. Um, the, every system in the aircraft has a backup, and all the backups are not in the same place. For example, all the electricity is not on a. Let's say 787, which is the aircraft that I'm flying right now, has 8 levels of electricity. Every engine has 2 separate generators. So these are 4 generators, and another 2 generators in the tail that that are being powered by auxiliary power unit, another engine that is started automatically when there is a problem. So we already have six generators. It also have different batteries, which I count as one backup, but some of them are in the back, some of them are in the front, some of them are on the engine, some of them are near the actuators of the controls, but let's say it's one because I don't know how to count them. And then if worse comes to worse, there is a turbine, ram air turbine that drops down and is turning from the wind and gives the aircraft sufficient electricity. So there is no one fuse box that is burnt and everything drops dead. And airplanes do not fall from the sky if they lose one engine because one is redundant. But even if for some weird reason lose all the engines, they are still in the air because they have wings and the wings fill the air so they can glide. And if they have runway or the Hudson River or the ocean, they can land, or an airport, they can land there safely. Airplane do not fall from the sky like this. And again, I don't know what happened yesterday. So no fuse box. Can the cabin lose pressure suddenly? If so, how dangerous it is to result in an accident? Yes, the cabin can lose pressure suddenly. For example, if there is a fracture in one of the windows of something like that. And the only problem that can happen at this time is because the air or the air pressure in these altitudes is very low, and there is a physical law that say that the content of the oxygen when the pressure is low is less. So you will not have enough oxygen and you will lose consciousness. And if you don't get oxygen, you will die. And that's why these masks, the oxygen masks will automatically drop. You put them on your mouth and nose, and the aircraft will immediately descend because the pilots know this procedure will descend to an altitude in which you can breathe from the outer air. This procedure takes approximately, it depends on the altitude, but let's say 5 to 7 minutes, and that's all. The aircraft will not crash because of loss of pressure. If you put your masks on, then you are safe, nothing happens to you. It never happened to me. If you are asking, I'm flying only 40 years. It is very, very rare thing. However, in every simulator test, I'm being tested to show that I know how to operate the aircraft and to do what we called an emergency descent and put my mask on with one hand. It's a piece of cake. Also, why do most accidents happen during takeoff? No, I don't think that most accidents happen during takeoff. And I don't know about it. We keep hearing how safe it is to fly, yet fatal accidents keep occurring on major safe airlines. This is what contributes to my fear. I flew the week after that woman was sucked out of the window and I was a wreck. Lori, that accident happened after 10 years of no fatal accident in the United States. And that happened, let's say, 3, 4 years ago, and none, knock on wood, no fatal accident happened. There are billions of people flying all over the world, and you don't hear about accidents. In the last 3 or 4 years, all the accidents happened, I'm sorry to be so blunt, but in Pakistan, in Indonesia, in Malaysia, in Turkey, and most of them were, let's say, yeah, most of them were connected to bad practice by the pilots. So if you are flying in the so-called Western world, so that woman that died, and there is no area in the world that there are not accidents. But you know, Lori, that in the year that that woman died, approximately 5 billion people flew, and she was the only passenger that was killed in the Western world aviation this year. Approximately 500 people, all in all, died that year due to aircraft accident, airline accidents, but that was the only Western world accident. So I think that the story that you're building in your head should be calibrated, sort of speaking. This is not a dangerous thing if you are trying to calculate your chances to die in such an accident. Then I think that to win the first prize in the lottery, you have better chances. Yeah, good. Why? So in the general concept of airline aviation is that we are not willing to accept an accident. And when an accident happens, first thing that happens, everybody knows about it because it's so rare. And this is because we're not accepting it. And every accident is investigated to the roots of the cause. And you saw what happened when they said that the Boeing 737 MAX was to blame on the accidents, and they grounded 350 or 380 airplanes. It cost billions of dollars and nobody cared because in airline, people are not willing to take chances. And that's what making the airlines so safe. You know what? I need to find a clip. Excuse me for a second. I need to find a clip that I want to show you. I'm working on my app, my video course on the app, and I will I will show you one clip that I want you to see. And this is how the aviation developed throughout the year in numbers of passengers in relation to the number of casualties. Yes, I found it. Let me just stop it and share the screen. And you're going to see it first in the world. It's a grand premiere for this thing. How do I share it? Where is it? Okay, so these are the years, and this is numbers. And let me show you. So during the years, from the, let's say, 1990s or something like that, we had approximately 1 billion or 1,200,000,000 passengers per year. And this approximately tripled until until last year. In 2019, there were approximately 4.5 billion passengers. And on the parallel years, the number of casualties, the deaths, in thousands dropped. So if it was growing in the same rate, you could say, okay, well, but on the same time, when the aviation tripled its volume, the number of casualties dropped by factor of 5 or 10. So this is really not a place to talk about many accidents or things like that. So that's it. Let's get back to my screen where I feel safe and good. Other questions here. Let's see. I will get to turbulence in a minute. Don't worry. How can planes suddenly disappear like that Malaysian airplane a few years back when they never found? And the answer is very easy, Justin. I have no clue. The only thing I can tell you, it's not just disappeared. Somebody made it disappear. That's something that I'm sure. And again, put it in the context. How many airplanes disappeared in the world in the last 40 years? One? Maybe two, I don't know. But think of the chances. Every day in normal year, not this year that shouldn't be considered, every day, approximately 11 to 15 million people fly. Every day, billions of people every year. And one airplane disappeared. Sorry to be a little bit, what to say, rude. I don't know, but it's statistics. It happened. Yes, if it happened to you, if it's not your day. But again, we take chances when we wake up in the morning, much greater chances. We don't have control of our lives on the lorry driver that just fell asleep on the road and crashed into some place. We are willing to take chances that this is correct, this is good. In airline aviation, we are not in such a situation. We are very safe there, and the numbers show it. Another question here. Did I have? No. Good. So, fear of flying. A couple of things to say about fear of flying. First of all, you need to know that this is a very widespread phenomena. We made a survey. We used Google survey mechanism And we surveyed last November, a few months ago, 1,700 American adults, out of which, listen to this, 41.5% said that they had fear of flying. 41.5%. Approximately 25% of them defined their fear as minimal, 8% as substantial, and 8% as critical or something like that. So this, you're not alone. But if you are afraid of flying, you are not alone. The answer is not. Bad turbulence cannot be dangerous. I will get to it in just a couple of minutes. And fear of flying is a problem. And the good news is that with knowledge, focused knowledge, you can control it. It will not go away. And let me tell you a story or a secret. Let's say I'm a pilot. Sometimes I'm also afraid of flying. For example, in the middle of the night, I'm asleep in the airplane and something is moving. I have to, what happened? And then I realize that everybody is asleep. Everything is okay. I turn and go to sleep. Fear is not the problem. The only problem is if you are not able to answer your fear, to confront your fear with facts. And once you know the hard evidence, then you can control your fear. So that's this. And why can't I get rid of my fear of flying? No, statistically, nothing bad will happen, but somehow my mind fears the worst. So fear of flying may not leave you ever. However, you can control it. You can, time and time again, confront it with facts. For example, you are on an airplane and you, before takeoff, and you say, oh my gosh, what's going to happen if the engine breaks? And then you remember that there are two engines at least, and the airplane is tested to take off with only one if needed. And they're two different. It's like two different cars in two different locations. And that's what can calm you. And again, if you exercise it with facts, and again, I'm sorry that I'm preaching you all the time, in just a few weeks, you will have 2.5 hours of 22 clips that address every aspect of flying for free. That's it. So that's the basics of fear of flying. And again, I'm not a psychologist nor a therapist or something like that. I can just give you the facts and the hard evidence. Takeoff. There was a question about takeoff, and if we have time, I will show you the clip from the app that is ready about the takeoff. Maybe at the end, I'll just put it and you can watch it if you want. But the main things that you have to remember, main things, and you may write it down. Takeoff in most of the airplanes takes approximately 30 to 50 seconds. So watch the time from the time the aircraft starts to move until it's rotating. It's 50 seconds. Second thing, remember that every event during takeoff, until a certain point, it's good enough to stop because you have enough runway to stop. So you do not continue. After that, the aircraft has enough energy to take off with only one engine. That's the second thing. Third thing that frightens people, and if you know to anticipate it, it can help you. Approximately 45 seconds after liftoff, after the aircraft leaves the ground, you will hear the engines going to low RPM. That's because you remember now that it took off with twice the power that it needed. And because of noise abatement procedures, we are required by law to reduce the power. So if the power is reduced after takeoff, approximately 45 seconds after liftoff, then it means that nothing bad happened. By the way, sometimes we were not reducing the power after takeoff because we already took off with so low thrust that's the minimal that we're allowed to reduce. And these times, during the COVID times, if you are flying and the airplanes are almost empty, we're taking off. Remember, the two engines each engine can carry a single fully loaded aircraft. So if you are taking off with half empty aircraft, then you have so much extra power that they are not allowed to reduce it more. So these are the basics of takeoff. And again, if you wish, I will put at the end the clip. It's approximately 5-6 minutes clip that details the stages of the takeoff and everything that you should see there. And now we go to the turbulence. I'll start by saying this thing, and please remember, and if you want, check me. Turbulence is a phenomenon that does not affect flight safety of the aircraft, period. No matter how severe they are, no matter where you're flying. It doesn't matter if you are flying an airline aircraft, because small aircraft like 4-seaters or something like that, it can crash them. But when we are talking about even a 50 seats airplane, they are built in a way that these loads that the turbulence are imposing on them are not dangerous to the aircraft. Period. No, nil. It is dangerous to whoever is not buckled up, because you can get hit by something or hit somebody. But the turbulence is a phenomenon that is not dangerous to the aircraft. There has never been, let's say the last 40, 50 years, there was no accident caused by turbulence to an airline aircraft, because these turbulence are not the highest load that aircraft have to withstand. The hardest load that they withstand is the touching down, and are being designed for that. So bad turbulence can be very scary and absolutely not comfortable. That's a given, but there is nothing dangerous in this. And the pilot cannot lose control over the aircraft, and the aircraft will not flip over, and it will not fall from the sky. I will talk about something very important in a minute about it, and I will try to explain it. The clip in the app has some more ways to demonstrate it, but I will try to give it to you. But the turbulence is a phenomenon that is amplified by our brains because we're in a closed place. And what I want to say, that our brains deceive us. Now that's a quite a little bit complicated things, but I would like to explain it to you. And if it's not really clear, then look for it in the app in 2-3 weeks when we have it. Let's think. Our brains is the place where the picture the picture of the world is being created. Our picture, how the world is, what we are doing in the world is created in the brains. For example, my brain now knows that I'm sitting on a chair and I'm not going anywhere. How? One is that that there are sensors that feel the pressure on my thighs and my bottom, and that tell the the brain that there is pressure, constant pressure. Second thing is my eyes see a constant picture of the room, so I'm not moving. Do you know, for example, you sit on a train and the nearby train is going and you feel like you are moving. You know that. So the eyes are very dominant in creating the picture of the world in the brain. Another thing that gives us the brain a sense of is the hearing. When I hear the voices from the constant, then the brain concludes and says, okay, Alon, you are sitting on a chair and you are not moving. Now, there is another system that feeds the brains, and this is the most inaccurate system in our body. It's called the vestibular system. These are acceleration meters or gauges that are checking the acceleration. When they feel if there is acceleration to any direction. When we were kids, we used to close our eyes and turn and then stop, and we felt that we were dizzy and all the world was turning until we opened our eyes. Okay, that's because of this system that is doing um, that felt that I was starting to move on this side and then stopped, and it does the this plus that, and it returns some kind of a still movement to some place, and then when I open my eyes, everything stops. Now, when we're in the plane and we feel the bumps, then okay, our legs and thighs feel that the pressure was changing, and our vestibular system senses the movement. However, our eyes see a constant picture. They don't see, like after I turn that I open my eyes, they don't see my room. They see a constant picture. And if there is a residue, there is something that is left from the acceleration to this side and to the other side, we feel like the airplane is diving, falling, whatever. I tell you, I fly tens of years. The aircraft does not move in the skies, even in the turbulence that we are talking about. It's hardly moves in the sky. You feel like it's dropping and falling. No, it's not. It's just an illusion caused by our vestibular system and the lack of an outward picture. If there were trees along the route, for example, which was not very easy to grow trees at 30,000 feet, we could see that we're not moving, and the entire feeling was different. And and if you want, when you fly and there is storm, ask the flight attendants to bring you a glass of water and look what happened to the water while you are encountering turbulence. You will see immediately that you are not falling. You'll see like this. This is bad turbulence. What you feel. Try it. Don't believe it. I watch flight tracking and planes seem to fly through storms. How do you determine when a storm is safe enough to fly through? We don't fly through a storm. Sometimes we fly above storm. Sometimes what you perceive, a lot of rain, a storm, it's not a storm. Storm is characterized by cumulonimbus clouds and we don't fly through them. But when you look at your app, Laura, you cannot see if they're flying above or below it. So we're not flying through the storms. Is thunder can be dangerous, Mohammed? Again, in the app, you will have a complete explanation, but I can tell you that the last accident to passenger airlines that was caused by an accident was approximately in 1974. Like birds that can sit on the electrical wire and do not get electrified, airplane is the same. The lightning, you refer to lightning, not to thunder. Thunder is noise. The lightning just goes through the aircraft because the aircraft is designed to let the current flow through it. I personally had at least one lightning strike in a 737. Nothing happens. Sometimes it can cause damage to the paint, the skin, to maybe one antenna of the aircraft, but it's not dangerous to aircraft. It is a little bit scary, though. I agree with you, Mohammed. Do we have any other questions? You may actually speak also if you want, or just write if you have any other questions. I will prepare, meanwhile, the clip about the takeoff. And I would like to wrap it up a little bit. It's very important to understand when you are entering a passenger aircraft, an airline aircraft, you are moving to a world that does not exist in any area of your lives. This world is built according to safety standards that are unparalleled in any other area of our lives. Every system that is critical has at least another system, separate one, that can replace it, and sometimes more, 1, 2, 3, 4, 8 systems. And all of this is regulated. The only problem occurs most of the time if you're flying in places or with airlines that are not keeping the rules. And if you live in the modernized world, you are safe. Even if you choose to fly a low-cost airline, they have to comply with the same rules, and they are exactly under the same supervision of the country. Like, let's say, if you're flying in EasyJet, then that's the same authority that is governing or checking them, like the governing the major airline of the same country, British Airways. So these are the major things, and fear of flying, which really causes you a lot of pain, is based on a mistake, a misconception. And with facts and knowledge, you can cope with it and contain it. I'm not sure that you can eliminate it. Rachel is asking here something. Wait. Can I mute? Yeah, you can talk. I did not.
Oh, okay. I didn't want to interrupt you. I didn't know if you wanted us on mute. Thank you very much. This is very helpful. About over 30 years ago, I had a bad experience, which is how I developed my fear. The plane was going from Boston to Philadelphia and encountered a storm on landing, tried to land in Philadelphia, but it couldn't land because of the storm, ended up going back in the air, and we ended up landing in another city. And I know this was 30 years ago and things have probably changed, but was that dangerous that when we tried to land in Philadelphia and couldn't and had to go back up? What prevented us from landing?
It could have been very dangerous if the pilots would insist in landing when the conditions are not good. And that's very strict. It was then, and it's the same. When I come to land, there is, for example, a certain wind that I can land with. If the wind exceeds by 1 knot, I still can land. However, if I land, the airplane and all the system knows exactly what are the limitations and that I landed 1 knot above the limit and I will lose my license. And I believe that the pilot that flew your aircraft did not want to lose his license. So that's why he didn't land there. We are in such an organized world. And more than this, the airplane rats out. The airplane is registering everything that we do. And if I land with 1 pound of fuel less than the minimal that I need to land with, nobody will know, only the authorities, and they will take my license. So if on the way I see that I'm going to land with less than the minimal fuel that I need, which is enough fuel to not land and to go to the alternate and then to land and still have half an hour fuel. And if I'm going to land with less than that, I will land on the way in order not to lose my license. That's how it works. That's what I mean, that we're accustomed to a world in which we are accepting accidents. Let's face it. We're willing to go on a cab where there is a single driver. Then if that driver gets a mild heart attack at 80 miles an hour, then God bless us. We're taking that chance, which is not something that can happen in an airline, because you have to have different things happening in order to create an accident. So that's not what you are describing is a normal procedure. There were times that I did not land in my destination because the visibility was not sufficient, or the wind was not sufficient, or I had to waste fuel on the way because there were clouds and things like that. And I had to land before that in order to refuel, and that's all. And that's exactly the opposite of being there. And when you watch the clips on the app, you will see more examples of things that might look frightening, but the opposite. They show you that everything is so contained and so directed for that, safety directed. What about the bird strike? Dawn is asking. Did I answer your question? Sorry.
Yes, you did. It's not that he just aborted the flight, though. He tried to actually land, and we had such extreme turbulence.
Yeah.
And I don't know how close we got, and then he went right back up and landed in another city.
Yeah, it's called missed approach or going around, and he wanted to bring you. And sometimes we do it. For example, if the wind is marginal regulation-wise, let's say the crosswind that is allowed is 30 knots. And if the wind is not stable, it's say 25, 35, it's not. So he's shooting the approach, and at a certain point he has to decide. He asked the tower, what is the wind right now? The tower said 25, then he lands. The tower said 31, then he goes around, he does not land. That's it. And he wanted to bring you, and that's all. And again, the turbulence is not dangerous thing. It's not easy. It is frightening. I know it's not dangerous. Where was I? Rachel, I did answer about the COVID. The aircraft are maintained according to during the COVID, according to the manufacturer's directives, and this is mostly a problem of money, and sometimes they are not serviceable on time. It may cause problems. However, most of the airlines in the world are rotating between the aircraft, so most of the aircrafts are flying. The pilots are flying less. Each airplane is flying less, but that's not a problem. How high does high angle of attack trigger vortex on the upper wing surface? Yes, the answer is yes. It triggers wake turbulence or things like that. It's not a problem. Higher angle of attack is what we do when we take off and land and fly at slow speed. And regarding bird strike, aircraft are designed to withstand the strike of a bird up to and not including, let's say, geese, Canadian geese or storks or something like that. Again, in my app, there is a whole chapter about birds, how the world of aviation created layers of defense in order to minimize the risk of a bird strike. Done. So you can look at the app and see it. Again, you will all get an email notification about that. Let me try to find the takeoff clip for you guys. And if you still have any questions, just let me know. So this clip is 7 minutes and 3 seconds long. If you guys want to look at it, you are very welcome. If you still have a question, you can post it here and I will answer after the clip. And if you want to leave, farewell. It's been a pleasure. And I'm still here. Good. Clip is going to run now. And yes, before I start, I just want to remind you, this is not a finally edited clip, but I do not want to miss this opportunity to show it to you.
In preparation for takeoff, we will hear some directions for the flight attendants from the cockpit. It can be 2 chimes, or it can be a message from the voice of the captain asking the flight attendants to prepare for takeoff. What is there to prepare for anyway, you're asking? Basically, for themselves for takeoff. You see, up until this point, they were allowed to get up, sort something out, or help a passenger. But now they need to be buckled up and ready for takeoff. That's all. When approval is received from the control tower, and this approval depends on traffic, we may have to wait a while. The aircraft will get on the runway, boost up the engines, and start accelerating. Large planes reach speeds of about 300 kilometers per hour or 190 miles per hour before lifting off from the ground. It doesn't look so fast when you're looking at the plane from the ground, though. Let's take a look at the takeoff, as seen from inside the cabin. Pay attention to the time between the start of the takeoff run until the plane is in the air. Takeoff is a dramatic phase of the flight. The plane travels quickly on the ground while we hear the engines and feel the liftoff into the air. Let's understand now, step by step, what happens to the plane at every stage of the takeoff. In the first stage, the pilot increases the engine power for takeoff. I remind you that we sit on a plane where every important system has a backup. If your plane has two engines, one engine has enough power to take off. However, if both engines operating, the power pushing the plane for takeoff is twice the power the plane actually needs. Significant excess power. When the plane reaches appropriate speed, we will feel that the bow of the airplane starting to rise. Those sitting in the back will feel like they're even going down, like a swing. As soon as the plane lifts off from the ground, we will start to hear the plane's wheels or gear retracting.
About 45 seconds after liftoff, it sounds and feels like the plane's power from the engines are reducing. Remember, the plane took off with twice the power it needed to address the very rare possibility of engine failure. So when both engines operated normally, we don't need to continue climbing with all that excess power and are required by law to reduce engine power. So when you can hear and feel the power reduction, you can know that everything's fine and all is going according to plan. After reducing power, the aircraft continues to climb. And perhaps we will also feel the retraction of the flaps on the wing. These flaps helped the aircraft take off at low speed, but are now no longer required. It's very natural for the plane to sometimes stop climbing and level off to let higher aircrafts pass. Such a leveling off will also be accompanied by further reductions in power, like a car that stops going up the hill and you take your foot off the accelerator pedal. For those passengers who sit inside the cabin and sometimes don't see the outside world, it may feel like the plane is descending or slowing down. It is only the illusion of our vestibular system, and looking out the window, if possible, will help reset the sensations. A few minutes after takeoff, we'll cross 10,000 feet on the climb. At this altitude, at about 2 miles, the seatbelt sign will go off, but only if the weather allows it. The aircraft will continue a gentle climb to cruising altitude, and the flight attendants will begin serving passengers. So let's repeat the takeoff stages. Takeoff phase on the runway, about 40 to 50 seconds. Wheel retraction and initial climbing. After about 45 more seconds, power reduction. Accelerating and retracting the flaps. After about 5 to 7 minutes from the start of the takeoff, reaching 10,000 feet, the seat belts can be unbuckled. About 20 to 30 minutes after takeoff, we'll reach cruising altitude. Yeah! If you want, you can listen to the audio clip where I am accompanying you in the different takeoff stages. Look for this in the clip.
I hope you enjoyed it. for the questions asked. Simplify app is actually available to download now from the stores, but the media on it right now is in Hebrew. And if you are not fluent in Hebrew, then it will be not easy for you to understand. However, there is actually, forgot, the audio clips there are in English already. So you may already download, look for Simplify, and just you can start trying it. I will send you email and publish in the group, in the Facebook group, when the app is ready in its English version. So guys, good night to me, good morning to Australia, and all the rest. Enjoy your flights. Do not let fear of flying mess with your life. You can beat it.
And secondly, once the meal service is finished, I'm sure you'll try and get some sleep over the course of the flight. So for that reason, please keep your seatbelts fastened and visible over the top of any blankets you might be using, and that way the crew won't have to disturb you if and when we switch the seatbelts on. Strong winds aloft tonight, giving us a very quick flight time, 6 hours and 20 minutes or so to London.